reliability, durability, accuracy, and performance. Just overall general performance at an incredible price point, or a price point that offers something extreme value, that the intrinsic nature of that product, the performance, again, of that product exceeds the monetary value in which you pay to acquire that item. That's what everybody's looking for. Everybody's trying to find something. What's the next best deal? What's the next best thing? And in 2020 and 2021, defensive shotguns became a very hot item. And in 2020, the American market started to see an influx of a new product. A lot of tactical or defensive shotguns out of Turkey in particular. Many Turkish arms manufacturers were running full steam ahead as they could throughout the times, whether they were actually what one might call a serious problem or something that was a manufactured crisis. But that's a conversation for a different time. In the United States, we saw a lot of unrest, and we saw a lot of people gravitating towards, maybe I need a defensive firearm, and for many, a shotgun seemed like the right tool, and for many it probably is. That's a different conversation in of itself. But particularly Benelli M4 clones and facsimiles like this AKSA S4 here on the table, and the point of this whole review, became increasingly available. Now, our cousins to the north in Canada have known about the Turkinelli or Turknelli M4 clones for a couple years now. Since the expiration of the patent on the Argo gas system, there has been some strides towards remanufacturing or reinventing that operating system, or simply directly copying that operating system by Turkish firms. And honestly, if you can offer close to the same performance in a gun that looks pretty much the same but has some Turkish flavor to it for a lot less money than the Italian stallion that is the Benelli M4 M1014, you've probably got something that's going to sell like hotcakes, especially to a nation of people that are gun buyers anyways and are absolutely looking for a smaller, more defensive or offensive capable firearm. And of course the Benelli M4 fits the bill, but for many the price point is a bit restrictive or too hard of a pill to swallow for something that throws slugs and buckshot. And I'm not arguing about price points, but that is some context behind where the Turkish clones, or as I think is more appropriate to call them, facsimiles of the Benelli M4 land. If you've been watching this channel, you'll know that this is the final review. And in nothing fancy-esque style, we are going to cover the AKSA S4. How much B-roll I'm going to roll in, I am not positive, but I'll try to include something so we're not just staring at the gun while I babble on for minutes on end. But all in all, the shotgun looks the part, and it definitely doesn't look the way it came out of the box for me. But that's kind of the point. These shotguns, even the real M4, a lot of the fun in owning one of these firearms is customizing, slapping on different parts and components, and figuring out what sort of setup you like the best. Maybe you're trying to tune for a specific use or load, but Most are simply going to try and enhance the usability in a combat or defensive scenario. And that's kind of the path I took with this. This was more of an exploratory way to find what do I like with this style of firearm and how would I apply it to the real thing. Should I purchase one? And if you haven't been watching this channel, hint, hint, I did purchase one. There she is, the Benelli M1014. But that's not the focus of the discussion. It's here for context, but it's not the focus of this conversation right now. What we are going to find with this gun is a mix of things. So we're going to go down a list here and trying to make it as succinct as possible. But there are some nuances that should be discussed. Up front, reliability and accuracy. Diving right into it. Reliability of the shotgun is at about 98.5 to 99.1%. I don't have a perfect record because I realized I missed some round counts and I may or may not have missed some malfunctions in the last several range sessions, and really have been trying to drive the round count up on this shotgun. But what I can say is that as far as accuracy goes, it's very ammunition dependent, of course, as any firearm is, but at the same time, it may or may not particularly like general ammunition. I know that for a fact. One thing we do need to discuss here on this review is choke tube selection, because without being too vulgar, the choke tubes that come with this particular shotgun are, for lack of a better term, dog shit. And I'll cover that in more detail in a minute. But as far as general slug accuracy and pattern performance with American-made, Turkish-made, Italian-made buckshot and slugs, I've found a pretty wide array. We've seen that the Herder's brand buckshot with a new choke, non-factory, but an American-made Trulock tactical choke, that both the Herder slug and double-aught buck were exceptional patterning and printing for groups. And I think that's indicative of what the gun is capable of. But you definitely, just like any shotgun, any firearm, need to pattern or accuracy test the loads that you're going to use for any sort of serious use. So the potential is there, and that's really all you can ask for it. There's so many variables that really they just need to make sure that they're consistent enough in their production that it accomplishes the task of it needs to have loads that it prints very well if they agree with it. So quality of load, the better quality it is, it seems the better performance you get out of the AKSA. Now reliability, again, you're looking at a very wide array of loads. You're looking at anything from cost-effective but quality defensive loads, and this is a pretty light one right here, the 8-pellet double-aught buck at 1145. That's just under an ounce. If you take in consideration the wad weight, yeah, it's right about an ounce, but it's only going 1145. So you're looking at like a 2.5, 2 3/4 dram cartridge that is perfectly capable of defensive use and being very effective up close to medium range for a shotgun at least. But many shotguns, semi-automatics, will have a problem reliably cycling this. This gun doesn't. Asterisks on that, point of note, this gun doesn't at a round count of 750 plus. So there is some slicking up to do when it comes to this action. It's a very strong action. It works pretty damn well, especially out of the box. But there are some things to be concerned about. So reliability and accuracy is pretty damn good. Now durability, and you can see it, I've not treated this gun with kit gloves. It has been used and you could say abused. But this gun has been treated like a working gun because that's what it is supposed to be. And it's maintained pretty good finish. Is anything about it up to par with what it hails from with the real thing, the Benelli? No, it really isn't. The Benelli is higher quality in every single regard. The Italian Stallion the absolute perfection, the best thing you can buy when it comes to an M4 is an actual M4. That is not what we're chasing here, though. We're chasing, is it good enough with this shotgun? And I think it pretty much is. We can question a lot of the finishing choices, such as the milled aluminum, or perhaps it's more of a zinc trigger guard, being painted instead of anodized. That's something that could be fixed with a quick spritz of Duracoat or Cerakote. I mean, this whole shotgun could be completely redone, even with a rattle can if you wanted to adjust the finish. But, you know, is it a big deal? Not really. It's good enough to serve the purpose it needs to serve. But this is not going to be the best ever for resisting rust and corrosion, if that's what you're looking for. The Benelli has a much better finish for that. This, however, you're going to need to take care of it. Is it going to cause a problem if you let a little speckle rust get on it? No. And it's not a gun built to be pretty. It's built to work. So there is that. So durability, inside and out. The outside's pretty good. Inside, we'll cover that. We'll take a look at the internals here in a second. But it is not to the standard of Benelli once again, but it seems to be good enough to last a pretty decent amount of time. Now, when the question of longevity comes up, I don't see this gun being able to withstand the round counts that the Benelli does whatsoever. I don't particularly think it's going to be so much a spring issue. I think your springs will probably last close to the same amount of time, the same round counts. You should probably be swapping your action spring at around 10,000 to 12,000 just to keep her fresh and running well. Your hammer spring the same. Your extractor and extractor spring maybe towards the 15 or 20,000 round mark. You can do it sooner, of course. It's not going to hurt anything. But they are maintenance items. They're expendable items as springs. But things like the bolt tail, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Things like perhaps the firing pin, which firing pins tend to just break when they break. They don't really give you a warning of when they're going to fatigue and give up. They just sort of do it. There's a lot of little things that are going to be maintenance items that might not be perfectly compatible with Benelli OEM items. So there's something to consider as well. This gun is pretty damn close, but it's not perfect. So be mindful of that you may or may not be able to just drop in an internal component. Yes, accessories like the Terra and Tactical bolt release, bolt charging handles, bolt handles, trigger packs, not the individual trigger components, and we'll cover that in a second, but trigger packs, magazine tubes, magazine caps, magazine springs, fowlers, choke tubes, etc., accessory rails, optics mounting, even down to replacing the sights are compatible with the Benelli M4 M1014. However, internal components of the bolt body and bolt itself may or may not be perfect drop-in fits. They may require modification, or you may simply be up a creek if you don't have this example of the Turkish clone or facsimile of the M4. If you don't have that style of production, that generation, you're going to kind of have a problem. Now, the AKSA S4, the Solon TAC 12, these two seem to have the closest out of all the clones, and I can't confirm with some of the others, the Topala, the Panzer. I know for a fact the Merrick, which is imported as the Charles Daly 601 DPS, which obviously is a no-go if you've watched the channel. Those are not compatible. Those are not internal components right. There's geometry that's off. They don't unlock quite perfectly the same. The cam tracks on the bolt aren't the same. There are things that if you drop Benelli components in, they probably won't work, but they also may cause damage to themselves through standard operation just because of those machining or design differences. So that is something to consider when you're looking at this firearm. So yeah, longevity, durability internally through the operating components, it's there and it's good enough to last what a lot of people are going to expect out of this shotgun. But if you're expecting to get the performance of the M4, of the real M1014 out of this AKSA or out of any of the Turkish clones for the price point that they're offered at, even though they're coming out of Turkey, which is genuinely a cheaper place to produce products, you're still not going to get it, because yeah, you need to pay $1,800 to $2,000 to get the real M4 or the real M1014. But if you look at the quality and look at the production capability of those manufacturers and you compare it apples to apples to Italian, American, Japanese, Portuguese, Belgian, whatever it may be, if you compare it apples to apples, that Turkish shotgun all of a sudden becomes, it's not a $600 or a $300 or $400 or whatever, you know, sub $900 gun anymore. All of a sudden it's $1,000 or $1,200 gun for the same quality, the same craftsmanship out of Turkey as you would pay $1,800 to $2,000 out of Italy or America or Belgium. So it's cheaper, but you're only going to get what you pay for. And with the AKSA S4, it still has value. It is. I've seen these things retailing, being sold online for as low as $400. That means you get it in your door. You get it to your FFL and whatever transfer fee they have, you can have this in your hands for sub $500. And that's a pretty damn awesome value, especially compared to a lot of the other clones, a lot of the other M4 facsimiles. But you're still not getting the real M4. So what I look at this gun as is a project gun. As I am going to trick this thing out and it's going to be my beater. Maybe I train with it. Maybe I learn how malfunctions do occur in the Super 90 pattern series of guns, particularly, of course, the M4 and M1014 being the only gas-operated Super 90 Benelli pattern of guns. So I am going to take a look at that. I'm going to decide how I want to build this gun up. What stock system do I want to run? Do I want to run the Mesa Tactical? Do I want to put a Benelli on it? What do I want to do? What kind of optics do I want? Do I want to stipple the fore end? Do I want to change this to something that is a rail or something else? Do I want to put a heat shield on the gun? Do I want a compensating choke? Do I want an extended choke? What do I want the patterns to do? Am I shooting slugs out of this? You know, on and on and on and on. You can answer for a very affordable price, what do I want to do? What kind of light mounting option? What kind of sling, etc. You'll notice this doesn't have a sling mount plate on it, and it doesn't have the impact weapons components, nor the Streamlight ProTac Rail 2 mounted on the gun anymore. Is it because the gun is a bum? No, it's because I figured out exactly what I want, and that part transferred over to the real Benelli the second I got the real Benelli. I probably should buy another weapon light and impact weapons component mount just for this gun, because I'm not so sure that I'm going to get rid of this gun. I think it's a good gun to have in the arsenal, especially for just beating up. If you're going to look for a truck gun that's for killing coyotes or taking around the ranch, etc., look at this gun. Is it really something I'm going to worry about? It's scuffed, it's dinged, it's a well-worn shotgun, and I've only owned it since July of 2021, and filming is in November of 2021. I've put this thing through its paces, even if I couldn't put 5,000 shells through it, because one, I couldn't find them, and two, I couldn't afford them. Still, I was able to learn what I wanted, what I didn't want it on this shotgun, and apply that to the real deal when it came. So there's a very nut and fancy-esque way to say it, a very solid philosophy of use. It's a project gun. Can you make it as reliable as the real Benelli? Yeah, but it's not going to have the durability, and it's not going to have the longevity of the Benelli, with the caveat that, yes, you can upgrade components, you can swap them out and just continually tinker with the gun. I think if you want a project gun and you want that M4-esque deal, you're going to find that. I mean, there's plenty of things on this gun that are not accurate to the M4. I mean, you can see it in the trigger guard, you can see it in the trigger blade, you can see it in the safety between the factory Benelli and the factory AKSA. You can see it in the lifter being an older generation Super 90 series style that is slightly short, that some people may have trouble with their thumb getting caught on. You can see it in a lot of different areas of the shotgun, like the sight, the rear sight assembly not having a detent for windage and elevation. So this thing under recoil will just drift around. The simple fix to that is put some blue Loctite on those threads. Screw them back in. When it hardens up, yeah, you'll have a little bit more difficulty turning them, but they're going to stay in place and they're not going to move. You're going to need to adjust your screw sizes. It might be the receiver, it might be the screw sizes. You'll have to file those down to fit the receiver. You're going to have to check every single threaded piece on the gun. Something as simple as the ejector not being totally riveted in with a post in the back and a screw in the front. I almost had that screw hog out. That would have destroyed the screw, and it also would have ruined that, and I would have ended up needing to replace that. The problem being, again, you need to check these things before you run the gun. Are they checking things now in the factory? Are they being cinched down properly? Are they being Loctited? Maybe so. I've seen mixed reports, but that's something you're going to have to check on. Not really something I worry about with my $1,900 Benelli M1014 when I took it out of the box. And I haven't checked it, and it's been rock solid. Have I ran as many rounds through it yet? No. But I ran some really hot crap through it, and I've been using it really, really hard. And you don't see that wear. I've been modifying the gun. You don't see that wear. You don't see those problems. So yeah, at a certain point, you're just kind of paying for names, but there is a certain prestige, as you might call it, that you do reach with the real Benelli. And I'm not saying that this is a bad gun. I'm just saying that we have to reality check ourselves when we're taking a look at what are we buying? What is this particular shotgun capable of? And we can see it can take all the accessories. It can take all of the components that we want to add to it to make sure it works. In fact, this gun, compared to other Turkish clones, it has a standard field style tube. Here's the tube off the M1014 before I put the collapsing tube on it. It takes this style tube. Hell, if I wanted to put this heavy duty guy on here and replace that, I could put that on the AKSA. It has a retaining nut. Everything about this shotgun is the same, and it's trying to wiggle its way off the table because I'm criticizing her, and she's a little nervous on camera apparently. But you know, I found out that I didn't really want a heat guard on my M1014 and adding that weight with that slightly heavier profile barrel and fixed choke. But it works pretty damn good on this AKSA, and I like it quite a bit. I learned a lot through building up this shotgun. I found out that, you know what, I was having feeding issues with the KZ magazine tube extension, and I had to tune the transition so that the magazine follower wouldn't hang up, and that the magazine springs that I put in it weren't quite right, so part 3 isn't entirely accurate anymore. But these are all things that you have to learn. So when it comes to accessories, I'm going to note that, you know, get quality accessories to put it on this gun. It will improve the performance. When it comes to the magazine tube, when you're looking at this, don't cheap out and spend 50 or 60 bucks on getting the +2 extension. Just buy for $115 the Dave's Metalworks full 7-round tube, and you will be happy as a clam. You'll be fine. Put your stinking American-made follower on, get your Freedom Fighter tactical handguards, and boom, you don't even need to replace the stock if you're worried about 922R compliance. Again, I am not your lawyer. I'm not your mother. So what you do is your business. But point being, this gun can be upgraded, and it's a lot of fun building it up. So a project gun. This really is a project gun. That's what its philosophy of use is to me. Reliability with quality ammunition, even out of the box, is high enough that, you know what? That's pretty damn good. And I can say that there are a lot of malfunctions that I, reduced the percentage of reliability of this gun because of me not knowing that the magazine tube extension was causing a problem, because of me not considering that the Turkish-made polished chrome or brushed chrome fowler that I swapped out the original one with was not helping anything, was actually causing random strange malfunctions. So yeah, there are some. If I take those away, now we can boost it up to around, let's say 99%, and even then we can dismiss it with, hey, quality ammunition runs just fine. So is it as reliable as the M4? In my experience, no. But again, that is asterisked with, this is a project gun, so I was constantly tinkering with it. Did I run it for 750 rounds as stock out of the box? No. Did I run it with 750 rounds with a full length, proper sized magazine tube and fowler in the gun, everything else being stock? No, I didn't. And I think if I had, I'd have a lot more positive things to say about it. But I think the reliability potential is there, just as it is there with the real deal. So take that as you will. Now, on to factory chokes. This is the Trulock tactical choke. It's kind of a hybrid compensator brake slash breacher. It can be used as an impact weapon. It can be used as a breaching device. I've tried it out on some tree limbs. It's been a lot of fun. It definitely makes it look cool. It doesn't help you with noise report, but she is definitely on there tight, and I have not had it loosen up with substantial fire. And then you can see there, that's for the Benelli Beretta Mobile. And it's a nice choke. I can't really measure the parallel section, but I imagine it's a cylinder to maybe improved cylinder bore choke, and is done very, very well with slugs and quality buckshot. So there is that. Why do I recommend you replace that? Well, because the concentricity of the factory chokes that came with the gun is not so great. And basically it caused erratic patterning, and it caused some really picky patterning, and there was a lot of blow by. The chokes would get extremely dirty in a range session, and I could tell that it was shaving off lead, shaving off wadding, it was catching a lot of carbon, it was following up the choke recess quite a bit because they were just a touch short. So installing an aftermarket, properly sized choke tube was the ticket for the shotgun, and it has helped performance drastically. A point of note, going to the front sight before I forget, this little bastard decided to loosen up over time and caused a problem. It hogged out its threads, it didn't have a lock washer, I added a lock washer and a bunch of Loctite, and I ended up actually having to epoxy the sight in place at 0. I marked 0 and made sure I knew where it was, and that's how I solved that problem. I was going to go up to tack welding it in place if necessary, but the epoxy, the Gorilla Glue epoxy, worked just fine, and it has not been a problem yet. Could it heat up enough to cause a problem? Maybe, but that is something to watch out for on these Turkish clones. They do not secure, and they are not of the same quality when it comes to some of these smaller parts like the front sight. But it is the same profile, the same size, the same thickness as pretty much as the real Benelli. And you can tell they're investment cast pieces, or they're more simple stamp metal pieces, which isn't perfectly correct. But again, this is a cost-effective clone, not an exact clone. Because if it was an exact clone, it definitely would cost more than $400 to $550 currently in November of 2021. So with that said, let's take a look at internal components at over the 750 to 800 round mark and see how she's doing. All right, so let's start off by taking a look at the bolt group. The bolt has taken some level of matting here. The extractor is still in excellent condition at over 800 rounds, what I'm going to call it. I'm not looking at my shot logs now, but I know we're past 800. Our cam groove track is looking great. We don't really have any peening. There might have been some slight, extremely slight deformation, but that's just been standard peening. Does it look as perfect as a Benelli? No, but it's not deforming anymore, or too much, I should say. So that's fine. Again, we did have to replace the O-ring and the firing pin retaining pin with one out of a Stoger M2000, which is a standard Super 90 pattern. So a Benelli one with the O-ring installed costs you like $9 typically to get it shipped to your house. So there's that. So don't worry about that. I would just swap it out anyways if it's giving you problems. The bolt tail is slightly more loose than I think it should be and has a little bit more play. And I will say that it has a little bit of a bow going on with it. Not sure what that's about, but it's also definitely loose down here. I can feel it wiggling around, and perhaps you can hear it clicking back and forth. So this has come loose. This doesn't have any form of solder or anything on it. It is just riveted together. Will it cause a problem? Potentially, and that's part of the durability. How much does a Benelli bolt tail cost? around $80. Will it be a perfect drop-in fit? I don't know. Another thing to note is the Benelli does not swing that far, but I don't think that's an issue. I think that's just part of the machining of this firearm. So if we take this guy apart, we can see that, yep, our firing pin is looking pretty decent. It's pretty damn close to the actual Benelli, but you may or may not have some fitment issues by dropping a Benelli OEM in. The cam pin is the right size. That would be easily replaced. Let's see if she's got any grooves on her. She shouldn't. Nope, just finish wear, so good job there. The bolt honestly looks great. It's got some ringing where the primers have set back on it. Not sure what that's about. It seems to be just a superficial finish issue. There's been no issues with the bolt between standard target loads as well as super high pressure max loaded magnums from the factory and magnums that I've put together myself that are pushing the upper limits of what is SAAMI spec. So no problems there. Everything looks good. Really, it's just that rat tail that's a problem in my eyes. But yeah, 80 bucks could fix it with putting a real Benelli one in there. And there has been a little bit of peening, but that happens on the Benelli too. Moving to the trigger group, and this is where the plot thickens. So the trigger group, it definitely had some mushrooming effect on the face of the hammer, which I did clean up over time. But a bigger issue was following the hammer home and double fires. And what was happening was when you pull the trigger and the firearm would go off, would reset, the disconnector, the sear, wouldn't hold on to the hammer appropriately. So as you let back off, instead of it catching like it does right there, and again, I'll demonstrate that close to the camera, cock it back. Okay, we've caught on our sear, on our disconnect. We're easing forward to reset the trigger. Instead of catching there, it would skip by the sear and either follow the hammer home or set the gun off a second time. So feathering the trigger at all would cause a problem. The solution to that, and this is difficult to see, but the solution to that is adjusting how the disconnect, the sear, sits up against the trigger shelf, the sear shelf on the trigger here, which basically you come in and you file down until this engages with the full disconnect shelf on the upper side, the back side of the hammer. So that when you release, right there at your reset, it does fully catch it. Another problem was this shelf, as well as the actual sear shelf on the trigger, was uneven. I had to very gently file, stone, and polish that, not taking off material to shorten the actual sear length, but just to make sure it was cleaned up and had a nice even break as well as a clean break. So there was some trigger work needing to be done. Have I seen more deformation since the start? No, not really. I think it's kind of set itself to where it's going to be. But that is something to keep in mind, that you may have to screw with your trigger. Is mine just a lemon? Do I always end up with the problem children guns? Maybe so. Maybe that's divine providence right there, because I have the willingness and the gumption to actually look how to fix them. But I will say that you may or may not have trouble dropping in Benelli components. These are definitely, this trigger group is definitely not to the standard of a Benelli or a Franchi or a similar Super 90 based gun. So I would keep that in mind again. Upgrading these components could behoove you greatly. But again, you're going to be adding $190 to $300 in expense to a gun that may or may not justify that. So that's a personal decision, but I rectified the issues that I had by some simple filing and polishing to make sure those sear engagements were correct. Any gunsmith worth his salt is capable of doing that for you if you're not comfortable doing that yourself. Remember, you can always you can always take off too much material. You can't ever put it back. Well, you could, but it probably won't work right. So there is that. I see no problems with the lifter after I properly diagnosed the issues that were coming out of the feeding. So the lifter is actually pretty high quality, high gloss blue, really slick. So quality piece there, and I have not had to adjust the engagement of the carrier dog, the lifter dog whatsoever. So that is a positive note there. So good trigger group, it's okay. It'll work, but you may or may not have some issues. Again, I ran this thing like a scalded dog, and it also had some slight quality control issues. If they've improved their quality control methods at AKSA Arms, I'm sure that a lot of these issues have been remedied. But it is something to keep in mind when you're looking at purchasing one of these guns. Next up, the pistons. So let's take a look here. We don't even need to pull them because I can tell you the piston side of the rods is good, but we do have some deformation. It has been like that for probably 200, 300 rounds. It's a little uneven. Yeah, it doesn't make you feel perfect about it. Just put my hand in front of the camera. But it works. It hasn't caused a problem yet, and they're free floating. They do what they need to. But here's a problem here. You might be able to see there's a lot of carbon buildup right there. And what that is actually a seal that has gone bad. It's how they've affixed the gas block to the barrel. Whether that was out of the box like that, I'm not sure, but it definitely has worsened over time. You can see the blackening, the carbon mark there. It has not negatively affected reliability in cycling, as far as I can tell. Both pistons are working pretty hard and doing their thing. In fact, there is deformation on both pistons. So they're both working pretty hard, and it looks like that this one just, whatever soldering, just didn't take. Can I plug that up? Yeah, I probably could with a weld or solder, but it hasn't caused a problem, so I'm leaving it. But definitely is going to blacken up your barrel with some carbon. And with enough carbon, it might actually sort of kind of seal itself back up, but probably not totally. So there is that. We don't see any real bad flaking or finishing wear here on the chrome plating. The bores looked really good. Again, we had that front sight issue, but overall, beside that slight deformation, which hasn't changed at all in like 300 shells, you should be fine. But these are probably could use replacement. And thankfully, there are some Turkish operating rods on the market that you can get the gas piston plugs and relief valves as well as the operating rods for around $50 or $60. So that is something to take in consideration. Also, again, while it does lend itself to being able to be swapped out if needed with this ejector, it's not completely riveted in, and if this guy loosens up, it's going to be a bad time. So I would honestly recommend blue Loctite. Probably red Loctite would be better for it. But just pull that guy out of the box, put some Loctite on her, and cinch her down. She doesn't have to be super tight, but she does need to be locked in there, because if it loosens up, it's going to cause not only reliability issues, but it's going to start damaging that screw, and then you're just going to end up needing a replacement screw and a replacement ejector, and you just prevent the headache. And when you buy the gun, just make sure that guy's Loctited. Now taking a look at the inside of the receiver, not sure how well this is going to show up, but there is some deformation on the back side of the receiver here, and it matches, of course, the back of the bolt. And we can see there is some wear there, but this receiver is kind of soft. It is aluminum, of course. Is it the same aluminum that is used in the Benelli? I don't know, and I would doubt it, but I did want to make that of note. And the internal stock components are, you know, they're blue. They're not chromed on the spring plug, etc. So that is something to keep in mind. Other than that, she's doing pretty well. Just standard wear and tear from taken apart, being used, being put back together. So there is that. Something of note, the spring here for the shell stop latch and bolt release was extremely rough, and by rough I mean high tension, so I did cut it down by half a coil, and that improved its use quite a bit. And I did polish up the tab, the front portion of the tab on that shell stop, which makes loading and feeding extremely smooth. So do keep that in mind. That may be an adjustment you have to make on a real M4 anyways. Sometimes those springs are just a little bit tougher than they need to be. But obviously you don't want to make it too loose and too easy to disengage, because you'll have failures to lock back and you'll have some feeding issues. So it's a balancing act. But other than that, that's pretty much all she wrote regarding internal components. So with all that said, I think the final question that everybody has asked is, at least I've seen it a couple times, is this good enough to depend your life on? And that's one that if you have any hesitation about it, you probably shouldn't. I personally, because I tinker with this thing, I play with it all the time, I know what it is and is not capable of, what it is and is not regarding quality, reliability, durability, etc. This had been a nightstand gun for me. This was a defensive arm that I saw great value in and I was keeping as a home defense gun. And it still does sit in a closet corner or in, you know, a truck ready to go if it does need to be used. But it is not my first choice anymore. My first choice would obviously be the real Benelli. But it has the potential for that reliability. With the magazine tube issue ironed out with the extension, with all the other fixes taken care of, it's in good shape. I know for a fact it'll run 9 rounds of this Herder's Defense 8 pellet 1145 foot per second double aught buck perfectly, and it patterns it great, and it won't be a problem. But in 400 shells, will the gun start to break down? I don't know. With the wear and tear I'm seeing on the bolt group, I think that rat tail, that bolt tail needs to be replaced, honestly. And I probably will do that. You're going to take a $400 to $600 shotgun with the AKSA S4 and you're going to turn it into a $1,000 to $1,200 shotgun, most likely, after all your accessories, after your optic, after, you know, you start tallying it up, especially with putting round counts through it, making sure it's reliable. And you're gonna take a gun and you're gonna turn it into a pretty expensive piece of equipment. And for a lot of people, myself kind of included, if you've got to modify a lot of internal components and upgrade them with another manufacturer's or factory originals just to make the gun last as long as you need it to and be the level of reliability that you're looking for, I think that you're chasing a white rabbit. Honestly, buy at your own risk, because I'm going to tell you right now, I've been contacted directly by representatives out of Turkey for AKSA Arms, and they showed interest. They were like, hey, thanks for your videos. It's great to see them. Did I have a lot of correspondence with them? No. They're not obviously sponsoring any of this content, but I think if they had a U.S. presence, if they had a U.S. office, you'd be really well set for them to take care of you. But I don't trust any of these importers, and it's nothing against SDS Imports. I don't know anybody personally there, but I don't trust any of these importers to actually stand by the products they're importing. They're not even carrying spare parts for their products, so consider that. A company that's not willing to carry spare parts won't even show them an inventory, even if they're out of stock and are having trouble getting them. But a company that won't carry that, I mean, you're going to look at long turnaround times for servicing. You're going to be looking at a lot of inavailability of components that may go down, firing pin, retaining pins, firing pins, extractors, extractor springs. Basically what they are doing, from my point of view, is they're looking at this gun, they're bringing it in, they know it's going to sell like hotcakes, and they're counting on customers not wanting or not wanting to deal with them, or not having the patience to deal with them for service returns, and that they're going to just, if something breaks, they're going to replace it with a Benelli component, which is the question of whether it will or will not actually work in this. I've not been tearing the two guns apart and swapping parts back and forth. It's just, I'm just not going to do that. I don't see a point in it, because the gun doesn't justify that in my mind. It's a cool gun, it's a fun gun, it's a great training gun. It can be reliable enough to be used as a defensive arm, but you're going to pour a lot of money into it over time. Now, AKSA Arms could step up their production quality. They could increase the cost point. You could see these guns go from a $400 gun back up to a $650 gun market price, with retail going up there, and all of a sudden the finishes are better, the quality of the components are better, your quality control is better. Again, you got to pay for what you're getting. Now, perhaps if that's your qualms, maybe the TAC-12 is your thing, but I've also seen reports of some similar stuff happening with the TAC-12. So it's kind of a crapshoot. You really need to evaluate each individual gun as you put it in your hands at the gun store. And from that point forward, you just need to know that this is not an M4. This is an AKSA, or this is a Sullen, or whatever the manufacturer may be. take that into consideration, and run from there. Because the real deal, you have the product support, you have the manufacturing support. Benelli USA covers you with a 10-year warranty so long as you don't modify the gun like crazy, which I've done on this gun and we'll get into in another video. But you're covered, right? The importer for these, they're going to give you like a 1-year warranty. They're going to say, okay, we guarantee it, we warranty it for manufacturer defect, and they don't give you much detail beyond that. And it's going to take forever for them to fix it. I mean, it just is. So with all that information, go into buying one of these with a clear mind and well-informed purchase. But honestly, if you're staring at one of these at a local gun shop for 400 or 500 bucks, or you just got to have one and you want to tinker with it, and it's a cool project gun, maybe it's a gun you can train a younger family member on, a kid or something, and have a lot of fun. Maybe it's just a camp blaster, you know, something you take to camp, and shotgun shells are still really well available in 2021 compared to a lot of other ammunition. Their affordability is fairly decent. You know, typically you're paying 50, you know, 30 to 60 cents a round for target ammunition, and 80 to $1.50 for defensive or buckshot or hunting ammo. Is that ideal? No, everything's more expensive now and it sucks. But when the gun costs 400 bucks, you know, you can have a lot of fun with it. If you got $700 in your pocket and you spent 400 on this and you spend the rest on ammo, you're gonna have a lot of fun, and you're gonna have a good experience just tinkering with the gun and having fun and modifying it the way you want it. So that is all I think there is to know about the AKSA S4. Again, cool gun, really enjoyed it, do love it. It's been a lot of fun, been a good project, but all I can say is it's not an M4, it's not a Benelli, and you have to take that in consideration. I think AKSA would do very well. They've got a good base here, and I would be excited to see their quality improve. And if they improve the components, if they improve their manufacturing skills, it justifies a higher price point product, and I think that's an excellent thing to consider. So I would absolutely, in a heartbeat, if they brought this close to the quality of the real M4 and you were looking for that and you wanted this platform, I would still, even if it was an $800 shotgun and it justified that cost, I think it would have value there, because the more they pour into it, the better it's going to do. So as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. Leave your comments and likes in the section below. If you have any specific questions that I can't really answer on the YouTube comment forum, you can find me at AmericanArmsChannel at gmail.com. You can give me an email there, and I'll be happy to respond and take care of you guys. If you're an industry representative and you'd like your products tested and evaluated or reviewed or debuted on this channel, and you'd like to donate something to the channel to facilitate that, you can also reach me there at that email. I would love the support, guys. As always, if you can, give me a like and a thumbs up. If you dislike, let me know what you disliked about the video, and I'll be sure to see what I can do to either tell you to bug off or maybe do better in the next video. We'll see how I feel when you tell me. But as always, guys, God bless. Keep your powder dry. I'll see you in the next video.